from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Wednesday night. We're live, we're national. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and it's a blessing to be with you. Our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. So check it out. The breaking news of the hour is that Secretary Bessent has announced President Trump has signed the deal with Ukraine for minerals. There is a minerals deal, and that was announced just a little while ago. The secretary tweeting, thanks to POTUS, President of the United States, real Donald Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I'm glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund to help accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. Economic security is national security. And he goes on to talk about how the United States government will work closely with the government of Ukraine to establish this fund, and we will look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people. And I got a clip from Secretary Bessent. Listen to this.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
That again, Secretary Scott Bessent making the formal announcement that Ukraine has signed the deal with the United States, giving the United States access to rare minerals, with the Trump administration committed to a peace process. And again, some of those details, as much as I know them, the Ukrainian Minister of the Economy and Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko flew to Washington, D.C. today to help finalize the deal on behalf of the government of Ukraine. I signed the agreement on the establishment of a United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. Together with the United States, we are creating the fund that will attract global investment into our country, she wrote on X, also known as Twitter. I'll never let go of Twitter because X just sounds cheesy to me. Now, upon taking office, President Trump said he wanted to give Ukraine's rare earth materials as a condition for continued U.S. support in the war. This is reported by Fox News. He described it as a reimbursement for the billions of dollars of U.S. military assistance given to Ukraine. Discussions about the possible deal went on and on. You remember the Oval Office, where Zelensky famously kind of left after getting into it with both Trump and J.D. Vance, and again meeting with President Trump at the Pope's funeral and seemingly cementing the deal. This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. President Trump envisioned this partnership between the American people and the Ukrainian people to show both sides commitment to lasting peace and prosperity in Ukraine. And to be clear, no state or person who financed or supplied the Russian war machine will be allowed to benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine. So that means Russia doesn't get in on the deal. Iran doesn't get in on the deal. I'm going to say I think China was involved in one way or another. Hopefully they're not part of the deal. And these are all good things. Now, the U.S. is looking to access more than 20 raw materials considered strategically critical to the interests of the United States, including some non-minerals such as oil and natural gas. Among them are Ukraine's deposits of titanium, which is used for making aircraft wings and other aerospace manufacturing, and uranium, which is used for nuclear power, medical equipment, and, of course, weapons. Ukraine is also rich in lithium, graphite, manganese, which are all used in electric vehicle batteries. The deal will establish an equal partnership between the two countries and will last for 10 years. Financial contributions to a joint fund would be made in cash, and only new U.S. military aid would count toward the American share. Neither party will have a majority vote, reflecting an equal partnership between Ukraine and the United States. Sverdlenko said the fund is supported by the U.S. government through the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. And unlike an earlier draft of this same agreement, the deal would not conflict with Ukraine's path toward the European Union membership, which was a key provision for Zelensky and his politicos in Kiev. So under the deal, the terms of the deal, the Ukrainian government will determine what minerals will be extracted and where, according to Minister Sverdlenko. So that's the scoop on this deal. And look, all I could say is another win for America, another win for MAGA, another win for we the people, another win for El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. Outstanding news. Getting this critical minerals deal was something that Trump was working on doing. Had to backtrack a little bit, renegotiate, get people back to the table, and we're there. And again, I don't think Putin wants war with the United States. I don't think that's the goal here. I think everybody has a goal. I think we're achieving some of our goal, which is reimbursement. Ukraine is getting the security assurances that they desperately need by being in bed with the United States. Beautiful. And voila, that will allay Putin and keep him at bay. So it seems to me that from yesterday to today, in the last 24 hours, this war is likely effectively over. We're days away from, or a week away from the beginning of the ceasefire. And my suspicion is that despite some continued skirmishes, we're likely to see things start to dissipate there. And that's that. At least that's my take on it. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Plus, we're going to get into a bunch of other things tonight. I want to get into tomorrow's National Day of Prayer. And that's always something I like to talk about because I know a lot of people kind of glaze over it. Say, hey, it's National Day of Prayer. Thank you. Have a good day. And we're going to get into that. We're also going to talk about just what's going on in our legal system. You've got Democrats that are flying across the world to El Salvador to defend Kilmar Obrego Garcia, the MS-13 terrorist that was deported. You've got Democrats coming to the aid of Carmelo with a K, Anthony, the guy who stabbed and killed the guy, right? And he gets this pretty, soft slap on the wrist, seemingly, all right? And he gets, he's out. Well, I should say, at least he gets bail, and that's not typically the case for people in this type of situation. So we're going to bring in somebody who was never killed anybody, wasn't even charged with killing somebody. He was charged with hiring someone to kill somebody, and it never happened. That person's still alive, and this guy's been behind bars for a pretty long time. He's got 2 decades that he's got to serve behind bars. Seems very interesting. He was refused a bond. He didn't get any bail, yet this person, Carmelo Anthony, he got bail. What's up with that? Then I want to talk about the economy, just to get a quick take on this minerals deal and what that means for our economy. We're going to do that with a former White House economist. And, of course, we're going to continue our conversation. There's so much more coming up afterwards, the religious conversation that we're going to have. I'm looking forward to tonight. So stick with me, folks. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company on the late shift tonight, Wednesday night. We're live and national. Of course, we're going to get to your calls momentarily. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And part of what I want to talk about right now is what's going on, right? Because the left is inventing things out of whole cloth, out of thin air. Se lo están inventando, right? They're just making stuff up because they don't really have too many more options. They really don't, right? They're kind of losing on all cylinders. They're not firing on every cylinder. They're really just blowing it, to euphemize what I really wanted to say. And this is a good time right now. I think they're all thinking they're banking on the economy continuing to fluctuate so that they can use that and say Trump broke the economy. Trump is going to oversee the largest tax hike in America. He's this, he's that. The issue is, I got to tell you, I've been a conservative voting Republican as long as I'm able to vote. Now, I know I said that before, and I say it again. I'm not saying that to toot my horn. I honestly, in many places, that's not tooting your horn. You can get smacked up and jacked up. But the reason I say it is because I'm working on this kitchen project in my house, and I went to one of those chain appliance stores. I don't know if these are all over the country, but growing up, I think they're based out of Brooklyn, New York. P.C. Richard and Son. This is not a paid advertisement. This is a true story. And so when I was a kid, them and another big electronics competitor was Crazy Eddie. And if you've ever been in New York in the 80s, you'd seen the Crazy Eddie commercials. And he would scream, and our prices are insane. Anyway, Crazy Eddie and P.C. Richard, they were always around. Crazy Eddie's not around. The Wiz is not around. Circuit City's not around. But P.C. Richard and Son is still around. I think they're on their third generation. And I think Gary Richard is the current CEO. And I'd gone to the big orange home improvement store. And then I went to the big blue home improvement store. And I saw a bunch of appliances and appliance packages that were advertised. And when I asked them, hey, this deal that you had for like the dishwasher, the refrigerator, over the range microwave and a gas range all in one for like, I don't know, $2,000 or something like that. I want one of those deals. And they were like, oh no, we don't have that anymore at the big blue store. They were like, yeah, they're $4,000 now. That was last week. They were $2,000. They were on sale. And I was like, oh, shoot. And they're like, we might have some for $3,000. And I was like, well, I prefer to pay $2,000 if we're going to be frank here. And my name's not Frank. Speaking of Frank, congratulations to my buddy Frank Morano winning his primary to become the next councilman from Staten Island. Of course, Frank Morano, a broadcasting colleague of mine from New York City. Shout out to Frank. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But right now, the story I'm telling. So I go there. Then I go to the orange store. And they have a better deal. But nobody has what I have because I live in an old house. It's 100 plus years old, like 130 plus years old. And it doesn't have all the right dimensions for things. Even though it was renovated some years ago, not everything is square. So the traditional 36 or 37-inch refrigerator area is not what I have. I think I have 35 and something. I don't know, because of inflation. I don't know. Shrinkflation. The house settling. But all I know is it didn't fit. And so I had to go with a smaller fridge. Now, the next size down from 36 is like 35 and 7/8, which is considered 36 length width. So they have 33s and 32s, which would work well, especially if you buy a side-by-side or French door. Now, I know I'm digressing. I'm sorry. Bear with me, folks. So I'm trying to get one of these things, and nobody's really interested in selling to me. It just seemed like they didn't care. So I said, let me go check out PC Richard and Son. And I went. And I met this guy, really nice guy. His family's from the Dominican Republic, really good guy. And we get to talking. And out of nowhere, he comes down and goes, look, I don't know about your politics, brother, but I'll tell you this. This is a good deal I'm putting together for you. I said, why? He said, because these people want to go after Trump. I don't know if you like Trump or not, but I like Trump. And I'm going to tell you, they're about to raise prices tomorrow. I was like, tomorrow? He said, yeah, May 1st, tariff pricing. Anything that wasn't made in the U.S. And he said, the only thing we have that's not made in the U.S. is General Electric. And that wasn't one of my options. I was looking at Frigidaire. I was looking at LG. I was looking at Samsung. I was looking at KitchenAid. But I wasn't looking at what I just mentioned, GE. Anyway, then it became more attractive. I was like, oh, maybe that's a good deal. But I was able to get what I was getting at the deal. The point of the story is that this is a guy that grew up in New York and then came over to Jersey, like me. And his family's from the Dominican Republic. He was born in the Dominican Republic. And in the routine sale of appliances, he feels the need to tell me, I don't know if you like Trump, but I like Trump. I've never been alive in Hudson County, New Jersey, which is one of the most Democrat bastions in America. I'd say they can rival San Francisco all day, every day. Besides me, Brett Schundler, and a guy named Jose Arango, I don't think there are any other conservatives in Hudson County, New Jersey. I think in San Francisco you might find a couple. But my point is, when you've got Hispanics, and this is not the news, it's not the media, this is nothing but real life, anecdotal evidence that Hispanics, Americans by and large, I would argue, they're on board with Trump. They're on board with the tariff strategy. They're on board with what's going on. And he says, and that's what he was trying to say. He was like, look, I don't care what these people say. I don't care if they start raising the prices. He said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to sell a lot more GE. And I could see the store was already set up for that. Certain appliances said made in the USA, American made, and others didn't. And he said, we might lose on TVs because we don't have any TVs made in the US. I said, well, how much you want to bet within 90 days you're going to start seeing some? Because people are going to want to do it. Patriotism is a very strong thing. I would dare say that it is stronger than communism. Because if you've ever seen the way communists operate, the way they love their dictator, their leader, it's a pretty strong thing. Just imagine when you're free to do whatever you want. When you live in a place and you have an economic system like a free market that has freed more people from poverty than anything else known to man besides Jesus himself. Praise God for America and the free markets. Anyway, folks, we're coming right back. We got more to come straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. Going to get to your calls momentarily. We also have a guest lined up. I'm going to get to him momentarily. But I want to get through this stuff because, again, some of the things that happened to me on the weekend I think are so, I'm going to use a word in Spanish, impresionante, right? They really impress upon me how real life is and how real certain topics are in our lives. And this kitchen project, one of the people who I got to do some work in the house was my former father-in-law, my ex-wife's stepdad. He came by. He's since divorced and remarried, and he came by with his new wife and to check out the job and really just visit. I hadn't talked to him in a really long time. Hadn't seen him in a long time. I talked to him, but hadn't seen him. And anyway, long story short is, I've told you before, and I stand by this. When I'm with my family, my friends, and whatever, I don't typically lead with anything newsy or political. I kind of turn that part of my brain off, and I'm just like, what's on the menu here, And I try to be as normal as I can and just not engage in this part of life. And others do. And his wife, they were talking about their service to their church, the ministries they're involved with. And I was like, oh, that's wonderful. That's really nice of you. That's so cool. And she comes in, same type of thing. She's like, what do you think about Trump's policies? I was like, huh? Where's that coming from? I knew her all of 18 minutes at that time. And she's like, well, I like them. I'll tell you what. And she's telling me this in Spanish, Dominican woman. And I found it odd because I can't remember another time where people just started bringing up political things, especially in the Hispanic community, right? It just wasn't something that we talked about so much. But she was another one. She didn't say, oh, I like Trump. She said, oh, yo amo a Trump. I love Trump. She absolutely loved what he was doing. So I say that again. Why? Not because it's the proof that Trump carried 69% of the Hispanic vote. We know that. But it's because when you hear Democrats like Hank Johnson, the Democrat from Georgia, go on his wild imagination claims about Hispanic workers being taken into custody outside the Home Depot, all I can tell you that is fake, that is phony, and that is fraud. Listen to this.
First, they came for the Latinos outside of the Home Depots trying to get work so that they could feed their families.
Now, why is he talking like this? I don't understand why he's talking like this. Go ahead.
And I didn't say anything about it because I'm not a Latino at the Home Depot.
But I am a Latino on the radio. Go ahead, Hanko.
Then they came for the Hispanic-looking folks wearing hats backward with tattoos.
Hold on a second. Now, I have tattoos. I have one on my neck. I have one on my forearm. And I might get some on my knuckles like Obrego Garcia just to mess with people's minds. What's the problem with tattoos, Democrat Representative Hank Johnson?
And they deported them to El Salvador. And I didn't say anything about that because I don't wear my hair backward, and I don't have any tattoos, and I don't look like a Latino.
Well, I do look like a Latino. I do not wear hair because I don't have any, but I do have the best head of hair in radio. And I think this is the most ridiculous line of drivel I've heard in a hot minute, right? This guy's off his rocker. I don't look like a Latino. I don't wear my hair backwards, my hat backwards. What is going on here? I mean, I don't want to use the PIMP word, but he really sounds like Bishop Don Juan. If you ever seen that HBO special, I believe it's called Pimps Up, Hoes Down. It was a documentary on the prostitution industry in Vegas back in like the late 90s. Anyway, the moral of the story here is Hank Johnson doesn't know what he's talking about. Nobody's getting arrested outside of a Home Depot. Nobody, ever, really. Like, ever. Show me the video. Show me the video of ICE raids going on in the parking lots of home improvement stores. I'll wait. I got the next 2.5 hours. You're not going to find them. That's not how this works. But this is how Democrats work. This is how the radical left within the government works. They put these stories out, they make up fake, phony fraud, and then it's up to you to try and prove it wrong. right? In the beginning, they said, oh, they've taken Puerto Ricans into custody, people that were born in the United States, people that have American passports. How dare you? Don't you regret? And then they had these fake like actor people or whomever they were coming out saying, I can't believe Trump did that. I voted for Trump, but I regret it. Listen, the only people that regret voting for Trump right now, I can tell you who they are. The people that are either facing a layoff or some other impact on their income because they were dependent on the federal government for their income. That's it. Those people that were like, oh, Trump's going to get us out of these unnecessary wars. He's doing all of that. And in the process, he's eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse within the government. And sadly for them, that may have included their job. But Hank Johnson wasn't alone. He was joined by Simone Sanders, who over the weekend made some comments very similar, saying that first, it's Hispanics that are in the United States illegally and being deported because they're illegal aliens. And the next step is going to be to deport black people. Well, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had a discussion with one of the reporters in the White House press pool. Listen to this.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for having us here. Also on the topic of immigration, not only do I think, the legal immigrant community welcomes what the president's doing, but also the black community. So I would love to get your reaction to recent comments made by Simone Sanders, who said that people of color would be next in line for deportation under this president. Now, that was a revelation to me and probably many others in the black community. Being a lifelong American, I'm not really sure where Tom Homan would send me other than my childhood home in Augusta, Georgia. But why do you think this fear-mongering is being directed at the black community over the issue of immigration? And do you think it's offensive to conflate illegal aliens who are rapists, traffickers, and sexual abusers with law-abiding citizens in the black community?
It's absolutely insane, and it is racist what she is saying. The president intends on deporting illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and are not only impacting communities across the country, but in particular communities of color in our inner cities. You remember the story out of New York City where young minority children were kicked out of their public school to make room for illegal immigrants to sleep on the floor of their cafeteria. That is putting America last. Doesn't matter your race, your religion, or creed. If you are a law-abiding American citizen, President Trump is going to put you first. And shame on Simone Sanders for saying that. She knows better, but she's trying to fear people into disliking this president with lies. But I think the American public are much smarter than she believes that they are, and that's why they reelected President Trump.
Well, I think she's 100% right. And let me tell you something. This is reminiscent of, 2020, 2021. Quick story. And then we'll take a quick pause and get to some of your calls. There was a time during that period. She just mentioned a horrific crime. And it reminded me when she said what she said. It reminded me of this particular case. And it was very dramatic because this was a very, very sad case. And as I looked into it, it became even, like it got worse every time I looked at it more. Right? But here's how the story goes down. There was a 92-year-old woman in Queens that would go outside every day at midnight. And she went out at midnight every day in like her day dress, her nightgown, whatever you want to call it. And she would go to the bakery that was right outside her house because at midnight they would close and they would throw out the bread that they hadn't used for the day. And it wasn't even hard yet. And she would take it and bring it the next day to a shelter. And while she was at it, she had a little cat food with her, and she'd feed stray cats. A kind woman. This woman's 92 years old. And she would go out every day. And one day, this woman was raped, strangled, and killed. And the accused rapist murderer was a guy named Reyes Kwan, Reeaz Khan. And he was an illegal alien coming from Guyana, South America. And the whole thing was crazy. And I remember it wasn't getting a lot of traction, the story. Not that it needs to, but a family member reached out to me and said, "Hey, did you hear about that story?" And I said, "Yeah, I heard about that story." And they said, this poor girl, that was her grandmother. She was somehow related to somebody in my family, like, a distant cousin of somebody that was like my brother's sister-in-law. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. That's nuts. And they were like, can you like talk about it on the radio and, bring some attention to it? And they were doing that because they didn't want this to go under the radar, because New York City is a sanctuary city. And in many cases, they were letting things like this go. But for people making noise about this guy eventually got in the trouble that he was supposed to get into, and he was sentenced to 22 years in prison, to life. 22 to life is what he got. But the bottom line here is, this is a sick man. This is a young man, 21 or 22 years old. He grabbed this woman between two cars, forcibly had sex with her. That means this man achieved, to quote Chuck Schumer, an erection. Forced himself on a 92-year-old woman and strangled her to death, leaving her for dead between the cars, just outside her house at around between midnight and 1 a.m. This is a monster that snuck into our country. And later on, President Trump did, meet with the family and help them, and he brought her to the White House, and, was able to do whatever he could. But what can you do when your grandmother's gone? They were just trying to have some solace, some peace, and some closure in, losing their beloved grandma in such a horrible, horrific way. And it made me think, when Trump ran for president and said, they're sending us their worst, they're rapists, they're murderers, he wasn't lying. And every person in the media that glommed onto that was like, you know what, you're a racist, xenophobe, homophobe, shame on all of you. You people suck. This lady's dead because of you. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, Rich Valdez, welcome back. Getting to your calls right now, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to go to Idaho and check in with Paul. Paul, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, Rich, thanks for calling on me.
You bet, brother.
I was thinking about the Ukraine war and the possible outcomes. Putin is he's gonna have his wants and his needs, and I think that Trump has his agenda as well. And if the two of them can meet and discuss this, Lavrov is going to be one of the ones that's going to discuss it for the Russians. That's Putin's right-arm man. And he's a tough go. He don't mess around.
I didn't hear the last part. What are you saying about Putin?
His Lavrov.
Lavrov, the foreign minister.
Exactly. He's a tough go.
Yeah.
He doesn't give an inch, in other words.
Yeah.
And the way that the war had gone on, it was a no-win situation. They couldn't get what they needed when they needed it, as far as supplying is concerned. They couldn't get airplanes for cover for the infantry and for the 155s to be able to take the land back. So without the airplanes, they didn't get the air coverage that they needed. It was just kind of like one thing after another. And now the Ukraine is kind of behind the eight ball as far as not wanting to give up any land to Putin. But they already gave away, Obama gave away Crimea, which was a huge blunder on his part.
Sure.
The other huge blunder on his part was to give blankets away instead of Javelin tank killers.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I hope that they get what they need so they can get the precious metals to be able to do what they need to do with.
Oh, the minerals deal. Well, Paul, part of what I think is interesting about this whole thing is things aren't always black and white, right? So, for example, or maybe they are, right, depending on how you look at them. There's an old saying, and I'm sure you've heard it. Sometimes the cops say it on the loudspeaker if you were at a party, and it's a really big house party. Rather than bust your chops, they would just get on the thing and say, you don't got to go home, but you can't stay here, right? I think that's basically what the message is for Vladimir Putin. It's that. It's, hey, Vlad, listen, you don't have to end the war. You just can't take any more of Ukraine, and you got to give back these parts. What you say and do and how you conduct yourself is on you. But just letting you know, you don't got to go home. You just can't stay here. And I think that's the message here. I don't think Trump is forcing anyone. I think he's saying we need peace, we need peace, we need peace. Hey, by the way, me and Volodymyr Zelensky, the actor-comedian, we have peace. We're now working on peace. Hopefully you'll join us in this peace. If you don't, then that's on you, right? Putting the onus on them. And I think that's the general direction that we're going in here, because despite being a critic or a proponent of Trump's, whichever one, any party in this deal wants to claim, you kind of have to play ball with this, right? You can't just say, nope, we don't want peace. You can't be on the record being that guy. You have to, in effect, say, all right, yeah, we want peace too. Now, Putin is a little bit more gutsy. He might try to figure out ways to do a little bit more damage. I don't doubt that. But I think this is why you get support from the international community, and then you become a little bit more industrious, and you get clever in how you make your moves. So we're going to see how it plays out, but I think that's ultimately it. Russia, you don't got to end the war, but you can't stay here. All right, Paul, thanks for the call, brother. Amigos, we come right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company for the next couple of hours. We're live and national. You know the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to have a conversation on the economy, on what this Ukraine-Russia deal looks like on paper, and what it looks like in practicality. How much money can we estimate a critical material, rare earth mineral deal looks like? What type of money does that generate with us being a 50-50 partner with the Ukrainians? What does that look like? And creating this fund, what do we do with that? And how often are they going to cut me and you, we the people, our dividend checks? Because that's what this is all about, right? Pay down our debt, eliminate the deficit, and all that surplus goes right back to the people in dividend checks. At least that's what I want to see. And a stable coin. Anyway, folks, I'm Rich Valdez. Hasta la próxima. I'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another hour of our program. I am slightly out of breath because I was running to make it on time. And I am happy to be with you again. Our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Big news today, by the way. If you want to chime in on social media and give me your reaction, I'd love it. It's at Rich Valdez with an S. Secretary Bessent announced a couple hours back that the United States has entered into an agreement with Ukraine for critical materials, as it's listed here, critical minerals and critical materials, including oil and gas. The United States and Ukraine signed this economic partnership agreement, giving Washington access to Kiev's, or Kyiv, I think is the way you're supposed to say it, but I've always known it as Kyiv. Anyway, their rare earth minerals in exchange for establishing an investment in Ukraine. The U.S. and Ukraine have been trying to hammer out the natural resources agreement since Trump's return to the White House. As you know, they had their interesting showdown in the White House with J.D. Vance. Then the sit down at the Pope's funeral, and now we have a deal. It's been signed. The economic minister of Ukraine signed it. Her name is Yulia Sviridenko, right? Sviridenko. I'm sorry. My Ukrainian people, please call in and correct my pronunciation. Anyway, she's not Volodymyr, but she is Yulia Sviridenko. Anyway, the part of the terms of the agreement are that full ownership and control stays with Ukraine. All resources on Ukrainian territory and in territorial waters belong to Ukraine. Adding that it is the Ukrainian state that determines what and where to extract. Subsoil remains under Ukrainian ownership. This is clearly established in the agreement. Now, they signed this just today, looks like, after hours of documents that were blah, 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 blah. President Volodymyr Zelensky expected to strike the deal during his trip to Washington in February. But the agreement was left unsigned because, that was a whole crap show, for lack of me thinking of a better word. Anyway, now they're back. So, again, my take on this is, all right, so now the U.S. is a major partner of Ukraine's. This disincentivizes the Russians from wanting to bomb inside of Ukraine any further, because now they are bombing the United States' interest. And that's not a good deal, right? And the United States is NATO. So from a position of leverage and security, this is very good for Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. My suspicion, of course, I'm putting the cart before the horse, but this war is all but over, right? I'm sure there'll be a couple of bombings here and there, might take out a natural resource area. Maybe Putin's generals will get overzealous and say, oh, you want the minerals, huh? Let's take out an oil field. Oh, you want this? Oh, let's go there. And blow something up. Got it. So that Trump will now have to say, well, Vlad, I told you to please stop. I told you to cut it out. They always push the envelope, right? There's some speculation out there that recent blackouts were the result of Russian handiwork, the ones in Europe, as a kind of, hey, don't get too crazy because we could do this to you too. And, of course, sending the propaganda right into the U.S., where I've had, no lie, at least 4 phone calls or text messages from people saying, what's going on? Is the grid really going down? I mean, clearly the grid can go down any day of the week. And if you're not prepared to fight a small army and starve for 2 years and, have enough food and water to survive for a couple of years and fight off a small army, then you're not prepared. And I think, this is something everybody should be prepared for. And I know it sounds excessive and crazy, but I don't know. Call me excessive and crazy. What do you want me to do? I think it's better to be safe than sorry. I think it's better to be ready, be prepared. Anyway, that's the story on Kyiv, Ukraine, whatever, the energy deal. What else? That seems to be the biggest breaking story of the evening. I mean, earlier through the day, you just had a lot of political back and forth. The usual. The left hates Musk. They once loved him. Let me see. Venezuela accuses the United States of kidnapping a toddler who was separated from deported parents. I don't mean to laugh, but just the way that they put it. Nobody's kidnapping anybody. Let's see here. Let me see if I can get into this story just really quick. No, it's not opening for me. Anyway, we are going to talk about this story. I want to talk about the Reuters story from yesterday, where they said that the consumer confidence is at an all-time low, yet the actual CPI, the consumer price index, is going down, right? So we got less inflation. I don't really care what they say about consumer confidence, right? I know for me, most people are looking at what, where they make their money, right? Some people are like, they want to make sure their future is secure. So they want to make sure their property value is worth something. They want to make sure that if they're have a monetized life insurance policy, they're hoping they get some money out of that. If they have a 401k or a retirement plan that has an investment option, which most of them all do, then they want to make sure they're making money that way. If they've just been saving cash, precious metals, whatever, they want to make sure that's taken care of. Everybody wants to make sure that they're okay in the future. And that's fine, right? That's what we're all here for. I don't know that everybody's worried about this particular number, the consumer confidence number, right? That this is something they're harping on because of the volatility in the markets. So if your money's tied up, your 401k, your retirement plan is in the stock market, and the stock market's going up and down because Trump is playing a very aggressive round of negotiations, a very tough hand of bluffing and poker with those that he's dealing with on these tariffs. We're gonna feel that for a minute. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And I'm glad that I'm on the radio and that all my shows are archived because we talked about that. And I talked about it because Musk tweeted about it. Somebody put out a tweet. Musk agreed. And he said, yep. And the guy was saying we have to be prepared for the worst. And that doesn't mean if you elect Trump, things are going to go south. No, it's the exact opposite. It's if you elect Trump, it's going to shake things up. It's going to clean out the gunk in your system, financial system. It's going to make things worth your while. And I think we're headed in that direction. Anyway, I want to have that conversation. I also want to get into what's going on with Israel, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on with the National Day of Prayer tomorrow. So we're going to have some discussion on some religious topics as well, a little bit later on, next hour. But right now I want to stay focused on the economy and do a whole lot of that with former economist in the Reagan administration. Came back because he's so nice. He got to do it twice. He was an economist in the Trump administration, White House Council of Economic Advisors. Steve Moore is going to join us straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez keeping you company on the late shift here 833-482, what is it, 5337? I never know the number. 833-4-VALDEZ. Use the keypad, give us a call. And I want to have this conversation on exactly what the economic impact is going to be of this deal, right? It's expected to have tremendous economic potential. The United States signing a deal for minerals with Ukraine. I want to bring in this audio clip before we bring in Steve Moore, because this audio clip is of Secretary Scott Bessent announcing that just a few hours ago. Check it out.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
That again, Secretary Scott Bessent announcing this big deal that has been signed. I want to know exactly how big is it? Is it just big or is it huge? Let's go to Steve Moore. Steve Moore is the founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. He served as an economist in the Reagan White House. So nice he got to do it twice, came back and served in Trump 1.0 as an economist in the White House Economic Council. Steve Moore, welcome back, sir.
Hi, Rich. Great to be with you. I just heard about that deal that they've struck in Ukraine, so I think it's an interesting one, and happy to talk about it.
Yeah, well, we've all just heard about it, right? It's kind of like breaking news in the last couple of hours.
Right.
And that's what we love to do on this program, is talk about whatever's going on in America at night. And we do it with all the movers and shakers like you. So what are your initial thoughts? I think this is all about security, right? Trump says, hey, look, these guys have something that we can monetize. That's a good deal. He also says, if I'm your partner, I being the United States, you're now protected, because an attack on you is an attack on me. If you hit this minefield, not a minefield, oil field, you're now hitting a product that I'm a partner in. And I think as we move forward in the grander scheme, and you might think I'm crazy for this, but I believe that Trump's moving, right, with the announcement last week by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the announcement a month and a half ago by the FDIC, that they're paving the way to allow cryptocurrency to not only trade on crypto exchanges, but to be used within banks. And I think once that's done, institutional investors are going to say, hey, you know what, why don't we tie a stable coin to the U.S. dollar? And that stable coin may be supported by rare earth minerals, and may be supported by precious metals, and may be supported by something that's worth a whole lot. And I feel like everything's going in that direction. Your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot there. Let me start.
Yeah, we got a half hour. Let's go for it.
Yeah, there's a lot there in this deal. So, and I don't know all the details of it yet. I haven't read through the details. I've just heard, what Scott Bessent has said about it. A couple things. First of all, Rich, do you know what country in the world has the most precious minerals and rare earth minerals?
I believe it's the United States.
Yeah, it is. And so there's a little bit of frustration that I'm feeling and by the way, Scott Bessent is a friend of mine. I think he's done a fantastic job. But come on, folks. I mean, the United States, you want these minerals? We got them in Colorado. We got them in Wyoming. We got them in North and South Dakota. We've got them in the mountains of California, Montana. Why in the world do we have to depend on Ukraine or Russia or China or these other countries, and some of them which I can't even pronounce their names, when we have these minerals in the United States? And
well, so that's like saying, look, I'm married, but I want your girlfriend because I don't want you to have her.
I guess so. So we just did a study at Unleash Prosperity that estimates that the value of our resources, and I'm leaving aside our vast energy resources, our oil, gas, and coal, which is another whole stack of money, but about $10 trillion of these minerals. We haven't been mining in this country for the better part of a quarter century because the environmentalists won't allow us to do it. And so, therefore, we have to go to countries like, as I said, Ukraine, China and others. So that kind of pisses me off a little bit. And Trump he has said he wants to open up new mining in the United States. I think that's great. Point number one. Point number two, as I've gotten older, and I've just turned 65, so I'm not a kid anymore. I've become more and more non-interventionist in my, foreign policy views. I really just think the United States should stay out of as many of these foreign conflicts as possible. And so we've spent $100 billion at least. I don't know the exact price tag on Ukraine. And look, we're all for Ukraine. They're the freedom fighters here, and the Russians are the aggressors. But we should get something in return for that $100 billion.
Yeah,
and so getting some of those minerals, I think, makes sense as a partial payment for what we've done for the Ukrainians. And so those are my initial observations in terms of the most important thing is we have to keep the mineral dominance away from China, because China, as you know, is the bad actor in the world. So those are some of my initial thoughts about this.
Well, Steve Moore, that's exactly what I'm thinking. When I made the girlfriend analogy, I'm thinking, you know what, if you're not taking care, right, if Ukraine is too busy fending off Putin to actually mine these things that they're sitting on, right, we know, all right, we're sitting on them too, but we don't have to mine our own if we could mine yours. Let's go and mine yours so that China doesn't get them, Russia doesn't get them, and now we're playing the same game China's playing, right? China's been playing that game all over the globe, leasing the lands of other people.
Yeah, except that that we, why not create the jobs and get the mineral resources here? We are sitting on a treasure chest of, no country is more endowed with natural resources than we are. And I'm talking about doing it. And look, I'm an environmentalist too. I don't want the water polluted, and I want clean air. We can do this in a way that doesn't, ruin our environment. So look, if Trump can come up with a plan for peace in Ukraine, and maybe this is a first step, that's a great thing. And then if he can get these trade deals done, which, when I heard Scott Bessent talking, I thought he was going to mention, that we're all waiting on pins and needles to see if he's got a trade deal that's being hatched with India or Japan or one of these Asian countries. And then if he can get the tax cut done, that's the trifecta right there, okay? Peace in Ukraine, a better tariff deals for the United States, and that big, beautiful tax bill. I believe that we're going to see a big boom in this country with our economy. I was looking at some of the consumer confidence numbers. They're not good, but I think we'll improve.
Well, we're going to take a look at those consumer confidence numbers right now. Folks, we're coming right back with Steve Moore from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, former Reagan economist, former Trump economist, all-around great guy. Glad he's here. Steve Moore, stick with me. We're coming right back. Amigos, don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Americans are feeling as badly about the economy as they did during the height of COVID. This is the fifth consecutive month of consumer confidence declines, dropping 8 points, and it's the lowest level in 5 years. And what really dragged down consumer confidence in the month of April was people's expectations about the future hitting a 13-year low. Here's what people were concerned about: the business outlook, their income, what that's going to look like, fewer jobs available, concerns about recessions hitting a 2-year high in terms of concern level, also concerns about the stock market. And in this consumer confidence report that is put out by the Conference Board, there's actually a write-in write-in section where Americans can write in sort of their top concerns. The top concern was tariffs, and that has reached an all-time high in terms of tracking that concern over the last several months. Also, I thought what was interesting in this report was that in the month of March, in this report, it detailed that consumers were making big purchases, cars, appliances, electronics, but not the case in April. Now it indicates that consumers are pulling back on these big ticket item purchases. Of course, that lines up, that tracks with the fact that the higher tariffs went into place in April.
So that's the latest scoop on consumer confidence. And I say, who cares? But I want to get the scoop of somebody who knows this stuff really well. Steve Moore, welcome back. Tell us what's going on.
I think it's all a result of the tariff wars that have been going on. And I know people have very different opinions about whether this is wise or not. I go back and forth on this one. I'm more kind of a generally a traditional free trader. But I understand what Donald Trump is doing. I've talked to him many times about it. He really does believe the country is getting ripped off by other countries. And incidentally, he's factually correct that we have lower tariffs than almost any other country we trade with. He'd like a level playing field. But it's caused a lot of turbulence, and it's caused a lot of problems in American manufacturing, trying to get the parts and the inputs they need to produce things. I've talked to some of my friends and donors who run manufacturing plants and other businesses say, to some extent, because of these trade wars, it's causing real havoc. So,
are any of them saying, I'm going to start building in America?
Say that again?
Are any of them saying, I have some operations overseas and we're moving them to the United States?
Well, I think ultimately, if Trump wins here, then that is exactly what's going to happen, Rich. I think we could, look, a lot of these countries are imposing very high taxes and tariffs on the United States products. So our farmers get screwed. Our manufacturing plants get screwed as well. So I don't like to see the turbulence and the turmoil, but I have a lot of faith in this president. I really do. I think that he's going to pull out a victory here. He's a winner. He knows the art of the deal. Now, maybe I'm being naive, but what about you? Do you think I'm right or wrong?
Listen, I think you're cautious. I think you're an economist, and that's what you're supposed to be. And I think I'm a reckless radio host that likes to live on the edge dangerously. But here's what I think. I went to buy a refrigerator, a dishwasher, and some other kitchen item today. And I bought them the other day, but I returned them, and I bought them again, different set. And the guy's telling me, look, I'm giving you the best deal possible because these prices go up tomorrow. I was like, bro, do I look like I was born last night? This price is going up tomorrow. He said, no, really. We have tariff pricing that's going into effect tomorrow. And I noticed the store had labels on only General Electric products that said made in America, made in the USA. So that's a real thing. And he said, and I said, it looks like you're about to sell a lot more GE starting tomorrow. And he said, you bet we are. And he was all pro-Trump, Spanish guy, by the way, Hispanic guy. But I think you're right. And I think this will work out. And it gets way better pretty soon, I think.
And if you're right, and I hope you are, and I think you probably are, I think that will be all the better for it. And then I think you could see a smoke in the stock market. You think a lot of the jobs will come back, and it will be a glorious ending here. I mean, look, Trump was president for 4 years. How soon the media forgets. So they keep saying, oh, Trump's policies are going to cause inflation. He's going to ruin the economy. We did this already. Wait a minute. He was 4 years. In 4 years, he grew one of the most strongest economies we've ever had. And if it hadn't been for COVID, he would have won a 40-state reelection in 2020. So he has experience. He's a businessman. He knows what he's doing. So I'm going to put my money on Trump.
Me too. And I look at some of the moves, right? I'm not, just to be frank here, not because of a lack of confidence, but I'm not putting my money on Trump here. I'm putting my money on the people he's dealing with. And I'm watching them. I'm looking at Honda say we're going to sell 90% of the cars in the U.S. have to be made in the U.S. I'm looking at Hyundai say we're going to build a steel mill here. When I see these big companies and all this foreign investment saying, you know what, we're banking on the U.S., I already know that the deal is working. When Ursula von der Leyen, she's saying begrudgingly the European Union is looking to make a deal. To me, the strategy is working, Steve Moore.
Well, I'll say one other thing. I'm old enough to, you mentioned in your introduction to me that I worked for Ronald Reagan, and I was very proud to. But I remember I was just getting out of college when Reagan became president, and people forget. I mean, my gosh, the first year of Reagan's presidency was awful. I mean, the economy suffered a terrible recession. We were trying to dig out of the hole that Jimmy Carter put us in with 11%, inflation and 17% interest rates, and it was just a catastrophe. So for the first year, everybody, the Reaganomics isn't working. It's a disaster. And then as soon as the policies kicked in, we had one of the biggest economic booms in the history of the country. And I think history may repeat itself here with Trump making some of these tough decisions now that are causing, no question, they're causing short-term pain. I don't even like to look at my 401k account right now. But I do think the long-term gain is coming.
Now, Steve Moore, I ask you this question. I agree with you on that, by the way. I ask you this question all the time, and it's not because I forgot what you said the last time. It's because I'm trying to gauge everybody I ask it to see if there's any evolution. Well, here it is. I'm going to shoot it at you again. I know that there's always talk about a return to the gold standard. Some of your colleagues are on the fence saying there's not enough gold to back up the amount of currency we have, so we can't do it. Others say, yeah, we can do it. Let's go back to the gold standard. I'm saying some sort of asset-backed currency, whatever the asset is. Right. And with all the movement with minerals, I'm thinking that might be part of it. Do you think I'm onto something, or am I making this all up?
Well, I do believe that one of the principles of a strong economy, and one of the things that's made America the mightiest country in the history of the world, is we do have a dollar that is, we want to have the dollar to be as good as gold. We don't want runaway inflation. We don't want prices rising and falling all the time. The purpose you have a currency is to hold its value. It's a means of exchange. And so I kind of feel like that the Federal Reserve Board's one job should be to keep inflation under control. I think it is a good thing that we have these.
Would you say control is 2% or 1.5% or less?
2%, yep, around there. But I do think it is a good thing that we have these alternative private currencies. I don't invest in them, by the way, because I don't understand them all that well, but I like having them out there because I think there's too much power in Jerome Powell and some of these central bankers around the world who act like they're kings and that they can press this lever and push that button and micromanage the economy. So I think keeping inflation under control is really critical. And, you can always buy gold. The gold price, by the way, has been rising. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's up to, last time I checked, $3,400 an ounce. So I do encourage people to own a little bit of gold in your portfolio of your savings as a hedge. And so that's where we are. And Steve Forbes is one of my heroes. He's a good friend of mine too.
He's a big gold guy.
He believes we should go back to a gold-backed dollar, and I wouldn't object to that.
Yeah, me either. And I've talked to him about that, and his thought is executive order, and we could do it that quickly. My thinking is that if I were a bad guy, right, a real criminal, I'm not going to say, maybe years ago, right, Reagan era, I might have said, send me a couple of pallets of U.S. dollars. But nobody's asking for that anymore. If I steal a person or a thing of value and I'm asking for some sort of ransom, I'm asking for it in Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin is worth more than dollar. They say it's volatile, but I'd say the dollar is probably more volatile. And it's secure, and it's not instant, but it's pretty fast. And it's the best game in town for people that are looking to make money discreetly, and that's where a lot of people are parking their money. So I know it's a relatively new thing, and people older than me don't like it. I'm fascinated by it because I think if the bad guys are using it, then we've got to catch up, right? The bad guys typically don't lose, Steve.
Well, listen, I guess the question I have in response to that is what really, in the end, what backs up the Bitcoin or these other cryptocurrencies? The one thing that you do have in the U.S.
Wouldn't we ask that about the dollar as well?
Well, I was just going to say, the one thing about the U.S. dollar and U.S. debt is that full faith and credit of the United States government stands behind it. Now, that's not nothing. That's why foreigners want to invest here. We have, I always say about our currency, we're the least rotten apple in the cart.
Yeah, no, and I listen. I'm not poo-pooing the dollar. I love the dollar. I'm just thinking if I were Trump, and I like to leave things better than I found them and reinvent the wheel in many ways, because he's kind of revolutionary that way. What would be the next step? And I think the next step would be somehow to create some parity with these more stable cryptocurrencies, or gold, or something to back up the dollar so that the dollar remains king. And I think for most intent and purpose, it still is. But, every now and again, I come across somebody who's saying, oh, the BRICS people are coming to eat your lunch and blah, blah, blah. I think all that stuff goes to bed, the minute that we become the leader that says, yeah, and we've adopted a stable coin that's backed by, I don't know, all of the minerals we have in Colorado and the full faith and credit of the United States.
I want our dollar to be the stable coin.
Me too.
But, we will see. My friend Judy Shelton has this idea that I think is kind of an interesting thing for people to ponder, which would be a gold-backed debt instrument like a bond. So when you buy a government bond, it would be backed by gold, and you could be paid back in gold. That's a kind of backdoor way to get a gold standard.
If it's good enough for Gold Bar Bob Menendez, it's good enough for me, Steve. We'll leave it there. Folks, Steve Moore, he's the main man in charge over there at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Make sure you sign up for his newsletter. Steve, tell him where to go.
Just go to unleashprosperity.com, and you left out the best part. You don't even need gold for this because it's free.
Absolutely. It is free, and I get it every day. And let me tell you, half the time it's above my pay grade. I learn a lot reading it, and you should too. Steve Moore, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Good night, sir.
All right. God bless you. And amigos, we continue the conversation straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I love your show. I love your views on things. I enjoy the interviews that you have, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, and I want to go to your calls. Open phones across America. Time-honored tradition here on this program. That torch was carried by the late great Jim Bohannon for 3 decades, and prior to that by Larry King. And I want to do it with you guys tonight. Let's go straight to the phones. Robert, Sherwood, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead.
Good evening, sir. Good to talk with you.
Likewise.
The reason I'm calling is I came up with a quote, and I hope it resonates with the rest of my generation. When I was young, Gen X and Gen Y, we got to watch our parents and grandparents slowly have the industrial base, the union base, the manufacturing base of this country get gutted through NAFTA, CAFTA, GATT, God knows many other trade agreements. And now that we are coming into power and we are taking the reins of power, we're taking it back. And Russia's not going to stop us. China's not going to stop us. Canada's not going to stop us. Mexico, the world is not going to stop us. And I got to be honest, we are willing to take the brunt. We are willing to sacrifice like our grandparents did, where we're going to have to live a hard life. And it's not going to be a year. It may not be 2 years. But we are willing to take that brunt. I am willing to take that brunt.
Well, Robert, listen, you are a patriot, and I thank you for sharing that. And I think there's a lot of Americans that feel the same way you do. My concern with that is always, how many are there? How many of us are there that are willing to do it, with Gen X and Gen Y making up the majority of our people? And that is what's scary, right? Boomers and I'm a Gen Xer, Gen Y, Gen Z. There's more of them than there are of me. And that's what scares me, that they're not willing. Hopefully there's enough of us to pull us through, and I believe that there is. Robert in Sherwood, Illinois, so well said. Thank you for your eloquence and for your call. Shout out to you guys in WLS, and God bless America. And let me see, do I have time count? All right, we go here to Julio. Julio is in Chicago, Illinois as well. WLS, go right ahead.
Hello?
All right, let's put Julio. Go ahead, Julio, go for it quickly.
Hey, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you know what the adult literacy rate in the United States is?
I can tell you that the childhood literacy rate is not very high, so the adult literacy rate is even lower. But where are we going with this? Quickly.
Well, really, I'd just like to say that a whole lot of people aren't very intelligent in this country. That explains a whole lot of things.
Sure.
You would think that Vietnam has a 96% adult literacy rate. The United States, roughly like 80%, maybe 84%. Then 60% of those people read less than a sixth grade level. Yeah. Of the 238 million people of adult working age, that only leaves 100 and some million people.
Well, listen, this is the reason, Julio, that we've been importing people that use critical thinking skills like engineers, doctors, and nurses. We've been importing them for a very long time. And if we don't put the emphasis on STEM education, we're going to continue to import them. And just because they come to this country and they become citizens doesn't mean that they're homegrown, right? Just look at Musk, for example, right? He's South African. This is a perfect example of what we have going on. Now, you could turn around and say, yeah, but what about Bill Gates? What about Zuckerberg? Yes, granted, God bless America. But you're right. This has been a long problem. This is why I got into education advocacy many, many years ago, because I realized we're getting left behind. And I don't know that, I can fix it or you can fix it, but I think together we can collectively kind of call out the BS. And a lot of this has to do with the institutional power that the teachers union has. And I'm going to, dare I say, their communist sympathies. Julio, thank you for your call. Shout out to WLS for coming back to South Carolina, and the rest of the calls, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I want to take a moment to say I really appreciate the callers on this program. And I get a lot of feedback from people saying, you know what, Rich, you have so much patience. You give people a good amount of time. And every now and again, I have to be quick or brief or curt with people because we have a clock, right? I can't take the break whenever I want to take it. We count seconds in the radio business. But the last two callers in particular made very, very, very poignant, important points. Right? Both Julio in Illinois and Robert in Illinois. Shout out to WLS and everybody in Chicago, Illinois, and that whole area. But really important points, right? That there are many Americans in this country that watched us lose the American dream, right? That manufacturing, that ability to take care of your family on one, maybe two incomes. And we need to get back to it. And maybe it's a pipe dream, but it's a pipe dream I'm willing to join the fight for. And the other one being, we have to get smarter. We have to get sharper. We have to be informed patriots. So, amigos, we're going to continue the conversation straight ahead. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. Your calls and more coming up as we continue the conversation. Hasta la próxima. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our program. We're live, we're national. I am blessed to be with you this evening. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and El Trompito Donaldus Magnus has announced that the deal has been signed with Ukraine on the, I don't want to say rare earth, but it was critical minerals and other resources that are up for grabs that the United States will be selling with them. In effect, have become a partner on the sale of their minerals. And this is, in effect, going to help us earn back some of the money that was invested into their war against Putin. Now, some people are wondering, how on earth are you going to get any money? How are you going to make any profit if the Russians won't stop bombing Ukraine? Well, my supposition, and maybe I'm wrong, we'll see how it goes in the next few days, is that it may not happen entirely overnight, right, immediately, but it will happen that people are going to just stop fighting when they realize, you know what, the United States is now there. They have operations in these fields in this area, and we don't want to start problems with the United States. It was cool when it was just this one little place. It's a non-NATO, non-EU entity. But now the Americans are there, and that's not a good idea. So I think this is a huge win for the Ukrainian people, and seems like a savvy move from my perspective. Now, El Trompito, 101 days of El Trompito. And one of the things that I want you to hear is President Trump, in a rare moment of praise for Joe Biden, well, maybe not praise, more like sarcasm, saying that Joel Baboso Biden did a fantastic job. Listen to this.
100 days ago this week, we inherited the wreckage of 4 years of economic disaster under the previous administration. It was an economic disaster. It was a disaster at the border like nobody had ever seen before. And you probably see we've closed up the border 99.999%, meaning 3 people got in. 3. As opposed to hundreds of thousands of people coming in on a monthly basis, millions of people, actually. There are periods where we had millions and millions of people pouring in on a monthly basis. We had 3 people. They buried companies in crippling regulations, waged war on American energy, pushed massive tax hikes, and gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. In Biden's final year, the United States had the worst trade deficit ever recorded, and we lost 106,000 manufacturing jobs. Other than that, he's done a fantastic job. But now all that is changing, and all that's changing very fast, because we finally have the president who wants to put our country first. You have a president who believes in America first.
Amen to that. I'm so happy that we have a president that cares about America first. But we also had a president before who made America dead last, right? Joel Baboso Biden. Now, I know people are thinking, come on, Rich, let him just be. I would let him be if it wasn't that we're still cleaning up the mess. We're still fixing what he messed up. This is a long-fought battle, and it's not fun for anybody. But Joe Biden, according to let me see, Jamie Raskin. You know Jamie Raskin, Democrat from Maryland. Maryland man, Maryland dad, Jamie Raskin. He says that Joe Biden, well, you listen to this and you tell me.
We know how to remove people from the country who should not be here. President Biden's administration did that. We know how to do it legally, consistent with the Bill of Rights and the...
Say what? You know how to do that? I don't remember seeing any of that, Congressman Raskin. Go ahead.
Constitution. But the Trump administration has discarded the rule of law. If he can sweep non-citizens off the street and fly them to a torturer's prison in El Salvador with no due process, he can do it to citizens too. Because if there's no due process, if there's no fair hearing, you've got no opportunity to object. And indeed, several American citizen children, including one with cancer, were flown to Honduras last week with no due process, as a Trump-appointed judge in Louisiana found. Now the courts have issued more than 95 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders against this reign of lawlessness. But Republicans want to enable President Trump to keep going.
There you go. Continuing to buckle down. Trump's deporting kids, families, whatever it was. And the real big story here, that Biden deported people. Who did Biden deport? I want to know. Biden could barely deport himself. And if he did, he'd end up somewhere in Puerto Rico and say, I grew up with the Puerto Rican community. I did. You know the thing? Yeah. Hairy legs. Anyway, so that's Joe El Baboso Biden. But I tend to be skeptical about Joe El Baboso Biden being the deporter-in-chief, right? I think that's fake, phony, and fraud. And Secretary Kristi Noem, I think she agrees. Listen to this.
The one thing that I want to point out is the fake news has been saying that Biden deported more people than you. And it's an absolute lie. And they're letting the Biden administration get away with manipulating and cooking the books. What they're counting for the Biden administration is every single person that came to that border that they processed and let into this country. They're allowing Biden to say that was a deportation just by processing somebody and letting them come into the country. It's absolutely false. It's not true at all. You have deported over 250 known terrorists. You've deported thousands of foreign terrorist organization members and gang members, hundreds of thousands of people that were in this country illegally. We've collected $30 billion worth of tariffs through CBP, and we've also collected millions and millions, hundreds of millions of fines and penalties from people that have overstayed here in this country. So I just want to thank you. You've been a game changer. I want to thank Pete for his leadership at DOD and what they've done. I want to thank Marco for his diplomacy and getting us travel documents into these countries. Mexico has finally come to the table and now is going to take a lot more people that we're able to send back to that country. And the president of Mexico told me, sir, she turned around over 500,000 people in Mexico before they ever reached our border. We should be counting those as deportations because they never even made it to the border because she turned them around because you forced her to.
Well, there you go. So that's Secretary Kristi Noem. And the rhetoric will always go on, but very well put, right? I think calling it out and trying to state the facts, very important that we use those, right? We use the facts and we don't just make stuff up like Swalwell and the rest of Raskin and the rest of the Democrat gang on the left there. Now, I want to continue our discussion on a couple of different fronts. I want to keep talking about the economy. I want to keep talking about the Ukrainian deal. I definitely want to have more conversation with you all, we the people. We got callers from California, from South Carolina, and so much more coming up straight ahead. And tomorrow is the National Day of Prayer. And, this is not just for Christians, but you've got Christians and Jews and Muslims and so many that pray. And tomorrow I want to make sure that you take some time to acknowledge, however you acknowledge your God and do some praying. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what the National Day of Prayer means to people, as well as what's going on with some of these people that are religious extremists on college campuses saying that we have to eliminate one particular group of people, i.e. the Jews. So we're going to talk about that as well as, some of the crazy stuff that the media just lobs at people. It's just crazy the way they treat people and the way they speak. And we're going to do all of that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way, Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And part of what I want to talk about, in addition to the National Day of Prayer being tomorrow, May Day, is how people use just wild accusations and insults against people of faith, right? Whether it's, people like me that believe in Jesus, or people like others that are Jewish, they just are insensitive towards Muslims. I think there is a genuine insensitivity against, I believe, all people of faith. It's almost taboo in many parts of the world, sadly. And I think we need a resurgence of people of faith. I think, I know I, for myself, need to be better at adhering to my own faith every single day. And I think that's part of the process, right? Is that continual grace we have to have for ourselves. But by and large, I think it's a bad thing for the media, for political opponents, for anybody to just claim that everybody they don't like is Hitler. But yet this is what they do, and they do it so often. And our friend from Newsweek, Batya Ungar-Sargon, she was on the news the other day, and she had something really interesting to say. And I want you to listen to this. Check this out.
And a person who half my family was murdered by the actual Hitler. In addition to it being deeply offensive to Jews, to call Trump Hitler is to call over 80 million Americans, 35% of Jewish Americans, 56% of Hispanic men, and the majority of Americans who make under $100,000 a year, Nazis, because those are the people who gave Donald Trump his victory. And I just have a pro tip for any Democrats who are thinking about winning back the working class, those people who make under $100,000 a year, who a majority of whom voted for Trump. You should have a visceral disgust for someone like Larry David, who's worth $400 million, sitting there and sneering and smearing the hardest working Americans for refusing to co-sign their own disinheritance. That's effectively what they are doing when these millionaires come out here and call Trump Hitler. They are calling working class Americans Nazis because they chose the person they thought would give their children back the future they were promised by this country.
I think that was really well put. And it's something that we just don't hear enough about, right? People just calling people out for their, I'm going to use the word probably quite generously, insensitivity towards people of faith. And to get some reaction to that and a couple of other topics, I want to bring in the Executive Vice President of the Coalition for Jewish Values, Rabbi Yaakov Menken. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. When you hear the clip of audio you just heard, what comes to mind?
Well, I think she was just saying it as it really is. I mean, it's a very unfortunate stage we've reached in American dialogue where you can just toss out the term, this guy is Hitler, this guy is a Nazi. When you are looking for actual Nazis, look at the Hamas terror organization. The key determinant of what makes Nazis, of course, was their desire for genocide, their belief that genocide was a good thing. The fact that he wanted to dominate the world, there's a lot of people who wanted to dominate the world. They didn't make the Nazis unique. Either the fact that he wanted to run the country, or he thought his country is better than others, he thought his race is better than others. Lots of people thought that. But the fact that he was a genocidal barbarian, that's what sets him apart. I don't hear any of the people in American politics being called Nazis who qualify. Hamas does qualify. They want the genocide of the Jews, the same way that Hitler did. They are actual Nazis. To call an American politician a Nazi just dumbs down the whole thing. And that's shameful, and it really does cause us to not address actual hate.
And, Rabbi, I think, it's obvious, but I think it's worth mentioning. It also trivializes the brutality of how 6.5 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust if we just call everybody Hitler or a Nazi.
I am absolutely with you. I think trivialize is the right word. I said dumbing it down, but I was looking for that word, and I appreciate you using it because that's exactly the point. When you take people who don't even remotely qualify as that level of demonic evil, and you call them that, it actually trivializes, nullifies the actual evil that they're trying to compare this person to. And there's nobody on politics in America that I would compare to Hitler, not on either side. It's completely inappropriate.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And with regard to what's going on with the war versus Hamas, the IDF versus Hamas in Gaza, there's continual talk of peace. There's continual talk of people going back on their word. The Hamas terrorist is not keeping their end of the deal, and I don't know. I'm getting Gaza fatigue, if you will. Right? I don't know what to expect anymore. My hope is that we'll achieve some level of peace, but I don't trust the terrorists involved. I feel like they're in it to win it. Right? They're willing to put their life on the line, whatever that looks like. And when you have people like that are that committed, and it goes into the youngest ages. Some of these, I've seen crazy videos of very young children that are equally as committed. It kind of leads me to believe, I don't know that you're ever going to get to a place of peace. What do you think?
The only way to get to a place of peace is to denazify the place, the same way they had to do it to Germany. Banned the Nazi Party, banned that sort of instruction, banned the belief system. Until you do that, until you admit that radical Islam is itself the difference. We talk a lot about religious freedom. You talked about the day of prayer. Not all religious belief systems are created equal. If someone has a religious belief system that incorporates the belief that everybody else is inferior, we can kill them, and we should subdue them, and we should commit genocide against them. That's a belief system that endangers everybody else. And we have to stop pretending that that's okay. And, of course, that's exactly what radical Islam stands for. The reason why you're getting, everything goes backwards in Gaza is because Hamas is genocidal. Hamas lies for a living. I mean, there's no untruth they won't tell. They are extortionists. They are kidnappers. They're holding people for ransom at a global scale. So don't wonder that they're not going to live up to their deals.
I'm with you there. It is no surprise that we can't come up with a deal with people that are taking old people and children hostage. Amigos, we're coming right back with Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Executive VP of the Coalition for Jewish Values. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
God bless you, because literally I think you represent, the new voice of America. What you say is what people are listening to.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, a couple of quick things. That voice you just heard, that was Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. Keep an eye out for a video interview that we did. It's on YouTube, and really great conversation, so take a look at that. Plus, we've got the National Day of Prayer tomorrow. We're going to continue our discussion with our guest momentarily. Plus, the wacky, crazy stories that I don't want to mention in front of the rabbi because I'd be embarrassed to talk about them. But one of them has to do with yoga and not a lot of clothes. Maybe I gave away too much. We're going to talk about that and your thoughts and calls on that. 833-482-5337. But first, I want you to hear this clip of audio because a federal judge has released someone that was advocating and defending pro-Hamas demonstrations on the United States, and he's now been released by a judge. Listen to this.
Madawi had been in custody since April 14th. He is a student at Columbia University and a leader of pro-Palestinian demonstrations on the campus. Now, his arrest set off protests who said that he was targeted for his anti-Israeli stance. According to court documents, the Trump administration felt that his presence and activities would have serious foreign policy consequences. Madawi's attorneys argue that he was detained for advocating for Palestinian human rights. Now, he was greeted by supporters this morning outside of the Vermont facility where he was being held and said that he told the crowd he'd never lost his faith in his belief that he would get released.
Unshakable beliefs, which is the belief that justice is inevitable. We will not fear anyone because our fight is a fight for love, is a fight for democracy, is a fight for humanity.
Now, the government argues that Madawi's detention is a constitutionally valid aspect of the deportation process and that courts are barred from hearing challenges. In the decision this morning, the judge issued an order barring the government from removing Madawi from the state or the country.
I'm going to take a wild guess here and make a $0 bet that this man will not be in the United States very much longer. This is a futile effort to try and get some attention to something that maybe some civil libertarians think is the right thing to argue for. But I'm going to say when it comes to national security, you're probably going to lose each and every time. Now, if they see a trend where, everybody and their mama is getting kicked out in the name of national security, then somebody's going to raise an eyebrow. But as long as it's people that are, birds of a feather flocking together, I think we're going to do pretty well there. And I want to get some reaction to this. Mohsen Madawi, 34-year-old permanent resident of the United States, raised in a refugee camp in the West Bank, and he was detained April 14th during a naturalization interview in Vermont to become a citizen. He was arrested initially because he was involved in one of the very violent protests at Columbia University. It put students at risk, Jewish students at risk. Columbia staff, one Columbia staff member, a janitor, was held hostage, and somebody went to jail for that. I mean, this was not a peaceful protest, not even fiery, but peaceful. This was not even a riot. This was a takeover of a college campus where at least one person was held hostage. And that's not something we should be allowing. That's not free speech. The left likes to say, oh my gosh, that's free speech, right? Remember when people were robbing things and looting things and breaking into big department stores and taking TVs under their arm, and AOC, all out crazy, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, said, oh, well, they're probably hungry. They're probably trying to feed their family, right? Or this man who's, advocating for terrorists and they're saying, well, these are his free speech rights. They're beating him up because of his faith. No, they're not beating him up because of his faith. They're beating him up because he's been radicalized to be pro-terrorist. There's plenty of Muslims out there that are not in danger of getting deported or going to jail, or they're not trying to kill Jews. But when you are a Islamist, a militant radical one, this is what happens. And if the United States government feels like they can deport you because you're a threat to this nation, who are we to stop them? Anyway, I want to get some reaction to this from our guest. We return to the conversation with Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Executive Vice President of the Coalition for Jewish Values. Rabbi, when you hear about this story about Mr. Madawi, your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing to listen to that. He's pro-Palestinian, advocating for Palestinian human rights. They dress it all up in this lovely terminology. The fact of the matter is, he's a violent thug. He was, together with Mahmoud Khalil, these are the guys who created the so-called Palestinian Student Union that took over the buildings, damaged Hamilton Hall, prevented Jewish students from getting to class, vandalized the buildings that they were taking over. This is who they are. So they were committing criminal acts, vandalism, civil rights violations against Jewish students, not letting them get to class. These are not people you need in the country. A person who comes into the country, even if they have a green card, citizenship is not a guarantee. It's not a entitlement. You have to earn it. And you have to, when you apply for a visa, you have to fulfill the terms of your visa. If you're here to study, you're not here to take over buildings. If you're here to explore getting a degree, you're not here to prevent other people from getting to class. So you commit those sort of acts, America has every right to boot you out because we don't need uncivilized people. Most of the world, what people don't realize is that even today, most of the world lives under a totalitarian dictator. The entire population of China lives under totalitarian dictatorship. Most people, and in fact most countries, most of the UN is comprised of barbarian dictators pretending that they believe in democracy. And that, we don't need the advocates for that sort of life taking away American freedoms from Americans.
Yeah, well, listen, you're preaching to the choir here. I'm with you on this one, Rabbi. I believe the executive branch has a duty and a responsibility to do this. And like so many other duties, right? Just like the ability to arrest someone that the police have. You have to use whatever power and authority that you have very wisely, very judiciously. And I think that's the expectation that the people have. And they want to have certain due process rights. And that's why people flip out if they think that their due process rights were violated. In a case like this, you get a lot less due process rights because you are considered a threat to the country and whatnot. But ultimately, I don't have the genetic fortitude, the gall, to go to a different country and do what these people are doing. I don't have it. You're not going to find me in France or Lebanon or anywhere else leading a protest, against the people there. I don't think that's going to happen. So in my opinion, if you're doing that here, it's because you have a very specific intention to do that here. And that for one tells me that this disrupts the balance of power, the norms that we experience and enjoy here in the United States.
You look at the way demonstrations are being conducted by these groups, and it's entirely different than what is allowed and culturally something that we Americans are used to. I remember when I was a college student, Christian leader of the moral majority, Jerry Falwell, came to speak on campus. And when he spoke, there were certainly people who completely disapproved and disagreed with what he was saying. And they stood up and silently faced the back of the room. It was obnoxious. It was disrespectful. But it didn't interfere with anybody else's ability to hear the speaker. You see, freedom of speech is only valuable if you value it in others. If you believe others should have the right to mouth on their own dime, maybe. Don't bring it to my campus. Do it wherever. But, if you're going to have a speaker, you're going to let the speaker speak. Even if you disapprove. Face the back of the room, that's fine. But you don't shout him down. You don't prevent him from speaking. And that's what's become normalized in America. There is no precedent for that in American society. In fact, there's no precedent for that in European society, except it is how you turn a democracy into a totalitarian dictatorship. You shout down the opposition. You prevent them from talking. Why do we know that? Because that's what the Nazis did. These kids on campus shouting down speakers, making sure only one voice gets heard, they're duplicating the tactics of the Nazi youth. Yeah. There is an entirely appropriate Holocaust comparison because their behavior, they're yelling Nazi at other people. They're the ones who are actually duplicating the conduct of actual Nazis.
Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Executive Vice President of the Coalition for Jewish Values. Let everybody know how they could learn more about the coalition and how they can follow you.
So we're active on social media at CJ Values. I am at Y Menken, YMENKEN, at CJ Values, Coalition Jewish Values, and of course coalitionforjewishvalues.org. We cover the gamut of values issues. Fighting for basic civil rights and fighting anti-Semitism is only a part of what we do. We invite your readers to come learn more.
Outstanding. Rabbi, thank you for joining us. I wish you a very blessed National Day of Prayer. Godspeed to you and all the work you're doing to fight anti-Semitism. And I hope to speak with you again soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. Have a great night.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, we continue with your calls from California, Delaware, South Carolina, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let's go to Don, Auburn, California, KNCO in the building. Don, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was hearing about that old lady that guy raped and murdered. You got that East Area rapist case. Joe did that more than once. Senior citizen, killed her dead. I got
great.
another
What's
case.
the point you're making?
Well, the point is that the FBI deliberately covered for him on a number of cases, and they covered for his half-brother, Ted. He had a half-brother named Ted. I won't give you his name for liable purposes.
Who are you talking about?
Joe D'Angelo, the East Area rapist.
I don't know anything about that. But thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Don't know how that really added to the conversation, but you're free to bring whatever you want to the table. But the old lady I'm talking about, it was horrible that she was killed. But moreover, if we had the border we have today, she'd be alive, right? Maybe not for long, right? Because she was 92, and I don't mean to trivialize her life. But she didn't have to die that way. Right, she could have had another 8 years in her. Who knows? A lot of people in my family live past 100 years old. It's not that uncommon at all. And sadly for her, she met a horrible demise because of somebody that wasn't even supposed to be in this country. And that is the point. I don't know how that coincided with your point, but the real point here is there's enough murder going on in this country for us to have to import new murderers. I guess that's the point I'm making. Don in Auburn, California, thanks for the call, brother. KNCO, shout out to you guys. Let us continue. Linda, Newark, Delaware, WDEL, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, love your show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You were mentioning earlier tonight about the thing with
the deal
Ukraine.
with the United States? Mm-hmm.
Yep, rare earth minerals. I remember not that long ago on your show, you had a speaker, and it was a woman who seemed to know an awful lot about Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And she warned us that we should not even try to get into any kind of agreement with Ukraine because, as she said, Ukraine doesn't have any rare earth minerals.
Right. That's Rebecca Kaufler. She is... she worked with the Defense Intelligence Agency, and she was an intelligence officer. And the deal that we signed with Ukraine today was interesting. It didn't use the words rare earth. It used the word critical material, and in other references, it was critical minerals. And that's what she said. They have critical minerals. They have critical, but she said the rare earth stuff was very rare. And the deal specifically was around the critical minerals that you need for batteries and the critical minerals or materials is what they were called of oil and gas. And I thought that was interesting. And again, the main goal here was, what does Ukraine have to offer that we can get a piece of so that we can get some reimbursement? Clearly, it wasn't money. They don't make a lot of money. They take in a lot of money, right, from the United States and other people that we're helping, but ultimately not enough to pay us back the $100 billion that we put into this war. So Trump is trying to get money back. And if he can sell some of their oil and become a 50-50 partner on their oil sales, become a 50-50 partner on their whatever sales, gas sales, anything else that they've got, then this is a win-win in the sense of we're now in business with somebody. We didn't, we've already invested $100 billion, so we're going to try and make that back and use that towards, hopefully paying down our deficit. But moreover, being their business partner offers them a security that they couldn't afford to buy. And hopefully that is a deterrent to Putin that says, look, I don't want to bomb the U.S. I want to bomb the Russians. And because we're there, and because we, in effect, are in a deal for half of those fields, oil fields, gas sites and stuff like that, I think that is in itself a deterrent. I don't know if I'm right or wrong on that, but I think that's the direction that we're going in. But you're right. She did say that, and I guess today that proved her right, that they didn't cite any rare earth minerals in the deal. Linda in Newark, Delaware, thank you for your call. Thank you for your listenership as well. Shout out to WDEL. I'm taking a pause right here, and then we're coming right back to calls from Pittsburgh, South Carolina, my man, and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Lee says, what's the biggest mistake you think you've made in the first 100 days?
I'll tell you, that's the toughest question I can have because I don't really believe I've made
You
mistakes.
made any mistakes.
We're in a transition.
That's President Trump saying he doesn't think he's made any mistakes on a town hall tonight on News Nation with Bill O'Reilly and Chris Cuomo and others. And I want to get your thoughts and reactions to that, the economy and everything else. Mark, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA Speed Round. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call. I really enjoy your show. You do a great job, especially when you're bringing all these guests, and we have a lot of different discussions. But tonight, the town hall, 3 things. O'Reilly, he stinks. I don't like him. He was a horrible job. He and Stephen A. didn't even look at each other or acknowledge each other in the room. A really fascinating body language between the two. I'm not a big Stephen A. fan, but he's not a lightweight like I thought he was in politics. Very articulate, very patient. And just overall, not just the dynamics, but the format of the town hall, and the fact that it was hosted by News Nation, and the whole way it was presented, it was very interesting to watch. I'm sure
it was interesting indeed, Mark. Thank you for that. And Stephen A. Smith's a very bright guy, solid communicator. O'Reilly, he's a legend. I mean, he gets under people's skin for sure. But thank you for your call. Thanks for your thoughts as well. Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina. I'm sorry, brother, the music is playing, but Jerome says, like James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. Exactly. And I know you mean that as a detriment to me, but I'm saying, hang on, brother, because you're going to see how the golden age of America is back. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.